Thanks, everybody. I will call us to order at 6:03, and we'll do a quick roll call before we get started. Start with John Barant.
Yes.
Steve Douglas.
Here.
Kevin Thusius. Not here. Andy Hartman. Not here. Melissa Gavin is here. And do we have anybody, and Michael Pomykowski as a guest. So here's our plan for tonight. We have a pretty robust agenda, and I'm gonna try to keep discussion I'm gonna try to keep within bounds. I'm gonna try to keep our discussion within bounds of maybe about 10 to 15 minutes each so that we can wrap up around 7:15 and get through as much as we can and then figure out our next steps from there. But we have a pretty robust discussion tonight. We're starting with, of course, any report outs or updates that we have, and then approval of our June 14th meeting minutes. And then we'll dive into some of the kind of more meatier stuff. We'll do a debrief of the NOMO May pilot project. We will have a discussion of the updated lighting ordinance recommendations that Michael has shared. We will have a discussion about research needs and what we want to elevate to the to Jay Langfeld regarding Village Hall and police building. We'll have a discussion around the village water sustainability philosophy that has been requested that the sustainability committee work on. And if we have, and based on the balance of our time, we'll see how much more, what else we can take on with regard to discussion on our sustainability plan, just kind of continuing to work on implementation of our sustainability plan. And we'll do wrap up and next steps right around 7:15. And so that's our plan. I want to pause here and see if we have anybody here for public comment that, or anybody that I can't see, Ryan, anybody that we're expecting.
I did not receive any public comment requests.
Okay, great. And then I can move us on to the next item of business, which is member report outs and updates. Are there any members of the committee that have an update or a report to give?
Sort of.
All right, John, lay it on us.
Okay, so last month we talked. I mentioned a little bit about the whole cleanup of the blockages in the creek, and had a little bit of discussion about how that, where that came from, and that the Lions were supporting it and all of that stuff. And then on the was it the 14th? Last
I don't remember. I think it was the 14th.
There was the big group meeting at the sustainability, or at the Vessel Cafe, and I met with Gateway to the Drift List, and I talked to somebody from Becwa, and Melissa was there, and Chris, her husband, was there representing pretty much the Gavin family, but also the Boy Scouts. And there was a little bit of a discussion of, let's set a framework of how we would go about doing this. I sent out an email maybe 2 weeks ago, throwing out a couple ideas on a framework. Mary Devitt, who's the Becwa representative, basically said, I'm traveling, I'll get back to you later. And that's kind of where it's all ended. I have some follow-up I have to do. I know that. But I just thought there were discussions. There's been a proposal put out there. Nobody else has commented on it, and so I still have more work.
Okay. Including me and Chris. I know that's on my list.
Yeah, I know, but I see you guys all the time. And so if I really get tired of you not responding, I'll just say, hey, respond.
And hey, John, was that the one too that you said there was a a connection to the Lions Club with that?
There's a connection to the Lions Club. There's a connection to the chamber. There's a connection to Gateway to the Drift List. There's a connection to Beckwa.
And that was all from that Vessel Cafe event.
Pretty
right?
much, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And for folks, just to help remind us, ground us in, this is connected to the sustainability plan for a couple of reasons. I think it was, I want to say, I actually should pull up our sustainability plan. I want to say it was like it covers 2 out of, I think, the 25 priorities. So this piece around reducing like the flood threat of Black Earth Creek, I think that was the 4th priority.
Yes.
Working with CARPC to reduce the threat of flooding. And it possibly there's also, I feel like there's actually a 2nd priority that it hits. So just to folks so that they know that that's the connection there.
Oh, and CARPC also was there and listened and said, oh yes, we so there was a connection to them made as well.
Right. Okay, great. Well, thanks, John. And I know I owe you a response, but but it sounds like there are other folks that also
everybody owes me a response right now.
All right.
And that's okay. That's okay, because I totally understand that people are busy. So
cool. Okay, cool. Well, on that, the 2 announcements that I was going to make, one is just letting everybody know about that Sustain Dane event that happened at Vessel Cafe. And I realize now it was on June 15th. It was a Wednesday, June 15th. John talked about some of the folks that were there. The idea was for Sustain Dane brought together a number of mostly organizations, but there are a couple of people who are individuals that were invited to speak. And as they said, share their sustainability story. And so they brought together, John just talked about most of them, Ice Age Trail and Beckwa, the Gateway to the Drift List, others. And it was just sort of like a networking event. And the idea was hopefully Sustain Dane is hoping that it would spark some new networks and, new like collaborations or, people working together. So John sent a follow-up email. I think that there's an idea that Sustain Dane would probably host other events too to continue try to keep people together, but I don't think I've seen anything else. I don't know that there's anything else that's been planned since that gathering. But it was a delightful event and lots of good conversation was had, and I had the opportunity to share the evolution and kind of why the sustainability committee exists and what our story is. So that was pretty cool to be able to share that. The other thing that I wanted to put on people's radar is that Mike Rupiper from CARPC will be joining us for next month's sustainability committee call. He'll be joining us for our August 9th meeting. And that'll be just a good opportunity for us on the sustainability committee to understand more about what CARPC does as the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. I think I got that right. And how we might dovetail our work and what are some possible funding opportunities and other resources that we might tap into as the Village of Cross Plains to help further our sustainability goals. So he'll be joining with us sometime, I would imagine probably the earlier part of the agenda in August. Those are my updates. Does anybody have any questions on that stuff? Okay. Anybody else have updates or report outs?
Hey, Melissa, it's Andy.
Hey, Andy, welcome. I had moved away from Zoom, so I didn't realize you joined us. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Hey, all good. I got an email I just forwarded to you from Kelly Hall, who works with the kids camps here in Cross Plains with the Parks and Rec Department. And they did some sustainability research and just reached out, and we're really excited about the kids using the sustainability webpage that you put together. through the village, and wanted to say thanks for that. And that's the update.
That's a great update. And I think really that praise goes to Michael and maybe Steve, right? Did the two of you help Bill put that page together?
Yeah, I think we had a little hand in it. Group
Well,
effort, teamwork.
great.
Like,
Guys, the kids got a lot out of it, and they suggested we, update our solar resources. So I always think it's cool when kids, want to contribute to the end goal. So
That's
oh,
great.
absolutely. Yeah. We need to take that feedback. Make it
Yeah.
a living document is hopefully what it'll be, not just a stack of encyclopedias just sitting there. So that's great to hear they were using it.
thanks for putting it together.
Andy, I haven't taken a look at the email. Does the email say anything specific about updating our solar resources, or can you say anything more about that?
Yeah. Basically just says, we were hoping that you could update your sustainability page with the following resources. Here's a glossary of solar energy terms. So they're just looking for us to add to our solar energy page a specific resource.
Okay, cool. That's great. Thanks, Andy.
Yep.
Any other updates or report outs? All right, then I am going to move us to the next item on our agenda, which is discussion and possible approval of the June 14th Sustainability Committee meeting minutes. And has everybody had a chance to review those? Do you need a minute to review them? And if we're good to go, would anybody
People
like
make a motion
to
to approve the minutes.
Thanks,
I'll
Steve. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thanks, John. I caught something really small that I don't even know if it matters, but I was looking at the meeting minutes. It said something like our next meeting is July 9th. So in the wrap up and next steps section.
Yes, thank you. I'll get a change.
Cool. That's all I got. With that change, we don't need a different motion, do we? We can just say all in favor of approving the minutes as amended. Is that right, Brian?
Correct. Yes, that would work.
Great. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Terrific. Minutes are approved as amended. Thanks, everybody. The next item on our agenda is just let's have a kind of a brief discussion on No Mow May, give the opportunity to do some debrief and evaluation. And I asked Brian if he could share come to the meeting with any input from the staff, anything that the staff heard or any other data that could help us in our debrief. So Brian, maybe you could start us off by sharing what you have or what you know.
Sure. I would say overall, the No Mow May initiative was very well received, especially once the stories started to hit the local news media circuit. It seemed like there was an immediate response within the community of people wanting to rally around that and be a part of it. Within Village Hall, we had an immediate turnout of people, but like within the day of the story running, that's when we had started to see the biggest amount of signups. Overall, we had over 30 people come into the office to sign up and request one of the yard signs for their property. I asked each of the village staff basically in the office on the regular day in, day out basis, whether they had received any feedback one way or another from people calling in and asking or voicing displeasure with the initiative, and nobody stated that they had received any contacts stating that they had not supported the endeavor. Like I said, it was a very positive experience and very well received overall. So I think you've got a lot of good momentum going into next year. And I think, getting this on the, radar for early communications to at least 2 months prior to when the initiative starting is probably a prudent move.
Brian, can you say the number again? Did you say 35 signs? Or how?
It was 31 that I had on my sign up sheet here that I'm looking at right now. At least in person here that I had, 31 on the sheet.
Okay, great. But
And
then
I
all
think
the
I
signs
picked
were
up-
gone, right?
Say that again, Melissa.
All the signs were gone. Is that right? Or do we still have signs?
That I do not recall. I did not confirm that. I should have asked that. I don't know how many we did order as a village. I'm not 100% certain on that.
I think, was it 50?
Yeah.
50?
We ordered 50 to start with, yeah.
I'm amazed. Honestly, that 30 is a big number.
I don't, I mean, I know that Melissa, you and Chris and your family did this. I did this as well because I was trying to prove to my son that his signs got out there and they were making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in time, I counted 35 signs placed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's about the number that I had as well.
And this is,
So that's
this is just people who signed up. That being said, they could have bought more than one. I just have the one name. They may have purchased more than one and placed it at neighbors or people who asked to see if someone could pick it up on their behalf.
And that would be true. I know I wrote my name down, but I took 2 and I gave 1 to our neighbors.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
And I know I took a sign before the village had actually gotten the sign up sheet up. So I think there are a couple ahead of me too.
Yeah.
So a few more out there.
I feel like at some point I heard that there were only like 5 signs left at the village. Maybe that was something that Mike shared. I don't remember, but I believe that very few signs were left at the village hall. So yeah, Brian, it'd be good to know whether there are any left over, but I don't think that we put in an additional order beyond the 50, but we did put in, the original order was 50. So, I feel like what we can comfortably say is at least 30 households, at least 30 residences participated in it, and a couple of like the St. Martin's Church, and I feel like another business or church participated in as well. Maybe not another church, because I think there's only 2 in the village, but 30 plus properties participated in it. So
I'm going to actually say more than that did. Just in my conversations with my neighbors, there was we're participating, but I don't know where to get a sign. And I had a lot of that kind of conversation going on. So.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Did anybody on the sustainability committee get any feedback from folks?
Yes.
Neighbors that you talked to?
Yeah, Steve did.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I got some negative feedback. And I think it was probably multifactorial. Just in general, I had a harder time recovering, if you want to call it in quotes, recovering my lawn back to quote unquote normal. I knew this would be an issue. A lot of things. I ended up on, I don't know, shortly the weekend before we were supposed to sort of, end this. I had come back from a trip. I was hoping to have help at home. I had none. A neighbor who promised to bring his rider over to help me mow it down ended up going up north, and I didn't have that available. I had COVID.
Oh,
so I'm out in the frickin' lawn trying to knock down, and I have I don't fertilize anymore. I haven't probably for 5 years, but I have a decently healthy lawn and it's big and I'm just, the cone of shame. I have a huge lawn. It's a big lot. And the grass typically, that time of year is when these cold weather grasses just thrive. And so it literally, and I have some awesome pictures of grass over my knee. So I literally had to take a weed eater, AKA string trimmer, and for hours, I had to hack it down to some sort of level that I could even get a mower on. And after you hacked it down, you had to rake it up, you had to haul it to the compost facility. Thanks, Cross Plains. So I literally, I think I spent 8 hours on it. And during that time, there was, I think my neighbor mostly got sick of hearing my weed eater. And it was literally the guy, he's not next door. He's literally a street over, but it would be within earshot. I think he got sick of that and came over and essentially said, when are you going to be done with this? And he just gave on the turned walk away. And he said, that attracts rats and snakes. And my comment was, haven't seen any. I wish I would have said that would be cool. But I mean, literally, I think that opinion is a legit concern of a lot of folks of tall, grass. And I'm sure this thing could have harbored, a family of rabbits, baby rabbits easily. And did I have the flowers? Oh yeah, I did. Especially the first, I would say 2 weeks when the grass really hit it. There was tons, and I've got great pictures of the diversity. But I have to admit, I think I got overwhelmed, and I don't know what I wouldn't do it like that again. So I don't know what my strategy would be going forward. Some sort of modified plan, like, I think Madison passed a variant of it where they had some agronomists who said the ideal height is something like 6 to 8 inches. And that's when apparently you get those early season varieties coming through with the blossoms that, because I had somebody come by and said, are the bees going to be able to find the flowers down there? Because the grasses are high. So I'm going to entertain some variant of it probably. But yeah, make a long story short, he did bother to come to, a street over, complained about the noise of the weed eater and, suggested I was attracting rats and snakes. So, which is unfortunate because I used to like him.
I had completely the opposite thing. Yeah, it's like, and I mean, everybody who knows my wife and I know that we really don't care that much about our grass. So Steve's lawn is far healthier than ours will ever be. And I totally get that. But the people that came by our house were all supportive and asked, tell me about it. And then asked, how do they participate? We're still getting neighbors coming by that said, next year we're going to put a yard sign out. And then of course, I had the, League of Wisconsin Municipalities stop by and interview me too. But my experience was completely the opposite. I didn't have anybody say anything negative. The most I've had is that one of our neighbors that we call Farmer Joe asked me how hard it was to cut the grass when it was over.
Yep. All right. Well, so what I'm hearing is generally, and really almost except for Steve, it sounds like there was not a lot of negative feedback. Andy, I haven't heard anything from you about whether you heard anything, but we haven't heard a whole lot yet. And so generally it seemed like it was pretty well received. The people working to get their lawns back into shape, that was kind of a struggle. Maybe neighbors didn't love hearing a machine go on that long to get it back into a manageable state. But overall, it sounds like it was pretty well received, and that marketing at least a couple months in advance is a really good idea. Annie, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with getting things back in shape was, it was like mowing your lawn for a month and a day. But which, it definitely was expected. I think we need to get Mike Axon on board with participating with Parks and Rec, and then making sure next year that we get the Village Hall on board with advertising as well. But I think, for the first year, nothing but positivity. And I think the signs were amazing. And the sustainability committee did a fantastic job getting this off the ground for the first year. So I appreciate that, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. And thanks to Andy, because Andy didn't just get the sign for the Gavin household, he actually installed the sign, which was like an added bonus. So Andy, you're hired for next year too. Thanks for that.
Every year forever.
All right, I'm going to wrap this discussion up, but I'm going to pause here to see if there are any final comments, things that folks want to get off their chest.
Is there any sort of expected deliverable back to the village, since we are in a quote unquote pilot? They're going to want to hear how it went. Do we need to survey people, something really quick and down and dirty, or is just the fact that in general Brian's office wasn't inundated with complaints? Is that sufficient?
That's a great question. Yeah, for Andy, maybe.
I would like more than that. I mean, I think the data that Brian has as far as signs and participation is good. But I wouldn't mind putting on the agenda and having members of the sustainability committee come in just, via Zoom, just kind of give their 2 cents on how it went to help promote it for next year.
Would it be worthwhile? I know we asked people when they took a sign to voluntarily list a contact number, email, whatever. I know surveys are not as easy as they sound, but would there be a quick 3-question survey? What was your impression? How difficult was it to recover your lawn? Did you get complaints? Something along that line. Would that informal type of survey back to anyone who chose to put their name down be worthwhile? Or is it literally just more subjective data?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that objective data is always a good thing, but I think because it's the first year that this is run, I think hearing formally from the committee would be beneficial to the board, just so that when we try and sort of amp it up for next May, that they have something to go off of, whether it's objective or subjective.
So would it be best to do it in the timing of asking the board to approve? I mean, I guess we have to decide whether we want to ask for a formal, making this a permanent thing, or if we want to extend the pilot. My inclination is based on this pilot that it's worth asking the village to, change the ordinance permanently to allow No Mow May to become, a permanent opportunity for the village. And so first, that's an assumption that I wanted to just check. But if we were to do that, then would it be coupled with a presentation on the kind of the summary, or should those two things be separate? The ask and the summary of this year, should they be separate?
I would say separate. I think that maybe just do like a reflection at the next board meeting. Hey, No Mow May, we've been talking about it, sustainability. And here's the data we've collected. And then when we come back into next year, when we want to sort of amp it up a little bit more and maybe get it out of the pilot stage, I think then that would be the way to go. That's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. How do others feel about that?
I was gonna say exactly the opposite. I was gonna say, we give the summary, which, outside of Steve's one neighbor, I think was pretty positive. I think we build up on the fact that Cross Plains got a ton of press on this, and it was all positive. And then we turn around and say, we would like to make it permanent.
But I think we can do both, actually. So I think what we can say is we make the recommendation to make it permanent, and then we come back to the village board in a few months with language asking them to make it permanent. So draft updated ordinance or something like that. But I think we can give the presentation, and I actually think we should give the presentation with a recommendation at the end of the summary, but not ask them to take action necessarily in that meeting.
Okay.
I mean, whatever you guys want, I support. I mean, let's make this permanent.
I think how about this? We give the presentation, we say, we are going to ask you to make this permanent. We will put together we will write the ordinance that supports that and get back to you. I'm good with that.
Okay, how do other folks feel? Andy, I heard you say that sounds good. You're supportive of that?
I'm all in.
Steve?
Yep, that sounds good. I'm just thinking about what are the essential things, the reflection. I kind of like that, framed it that way. We have what Brian saw and his staff saw at the village, the number of signs, the fact that there was really no negative feedback. But I would mention it. I think it's worthwhile mentioning my one-off too, because I mean, we know we shouldn't paint it as a,
Oh, I agree with
right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that.
And maybe mention that, yes, it's challenging to recover your lawn or whatever, but I don't know if we have anything beyond that data wise, do we?
Like number of pollinators seen in the
Outside
lawn,
of
that kind of
walking
thing.
up and down the street, taking pictures of bees in people's yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was just me. Because
I had 1 million pollinators in my yard, I counted.
One other thing, and what this was one of the comments that one of the staff had given. They had said maybe even consider expanding to include like other aspects of the initiative, like no spray May, like no pesticides or fertilizers for the month, or even I know in other municipalities around Madison and the country had adopted low mow May, which it sounds counterintuitive. You'd think it's high mow May as far as like keep your grass higher, but low mow May and like maintaining higher lawns for the month, which could, reduce some of the issues related to some of the difficulty cleaning up. At the end of the month, you could have different signs and different people embrace different aspects of it. I know it would be probably a tougher sell without the village board, involvement and presentation for them to, just my personal feedback, to adopt a full-on village approach to any of that. I can see like Bear Park would be really hard to maintain if the village didn't mow that during that period of time. But maybe,
oh, come on, Brian, we can do it, buddy. We can do it.
maybe a lower mow version,
push mowers.
Yeah.
Come on, Brian, you can do it, buddy.
Hey, if it would get me out of the office for a day, I'll pitch in, but it might take more than a day.
Okay, so I'm really liking this, Brian. Number one, your staff had made a suggestion. They had seen some other, I don't think I've seen that, like no spray May. I mean, that's kind of cool. And again, it's not like we have to push for that now, but could we at least get some of those additional initiatives on our website around like the No Mow May I like the low mo May. That possibly is a strategy I might take if I can figure a way to do it. But then just, higher lawn heights. Right now, I have got just like tons of clover and tons of bumblebees. They like that kind of stuff. So just going a little higher. So, I mean, not to lose the fact that your staff actually had some suggestions. I think this is really cool, and I hadn't heard of it, and it sounds like a great resource. Wondering if we could add something like that to our website.
Yeah, so adding additional resources to the website, I think that's a great idea, and certainly things to build on for next year. So what I'm hearing is I think everybody's in favor of trying to get in front, give a brief presentation to the village board, just thinking about timing. And so two things I'm curious about timing. I would think probably July would not be the play just because we're coming up on that pretty quickly. But Brian, would we be able to get on the August agenda?
I could definitely add you as a tentative spot right now. No problem.
Okay, and then is there anybody on the committee who would like to make this presentation?
I mean, I can step in and obviously, as a board member, assist or take the lead on that. But I think it'd be better if it came from somebody from sustainability.
I don't mind doing that.
Okay.
There can't be anybody that was just surprised by that answer that I gave. So.
Well, I think it's cool that you did get like multiple,
Yeah, I just
positive
had one
feedback.
yesterday. Our neighbor across the street walked across Main Street to tell us that it was the coolest. It was very cool. I was stunned.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
She
So
survived crossing Main Street. That's
Yeah, well, there's that too.
So Brian, we're going to try to get on the August agenda, and John, you'll give a presentation. And the reason that I wanted to push it back till August is because it would just give us one more opportunity if there's anything that whoever was going to present, if you wanted to run anything past the rest of the committee, just give you an opportunity to get it in front of the committee one more time. So we'll plan on that. And if there are any images that you want to use, or if there's any help that you want in pulling that presentation together, John, let us know, but we'll plan on you doing that presentation. And that would be is that August 22nd?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
What's the time on that?
6 p.m.
Okay, I'll be there too.
Before I go too far on this, let me just check. Nope, August 22nd works.
All right, great. Thanks, John.
And I'd be happy to help John with anything you want to put together.
Okay.
Great.
All
right,
and Melissa,
Yep.
on the Epic Adventure, I'm bringing my laptop.
I'm not working on the Epic Adventure.
Oh yeah, you are.
All right, I'm going to move us on because we have so many other really big topics to cover, but this is fabulous. We've got our next steps here, and got some good notes for what we want to adjust going forward for next year. So thanks, everybody. Next up is discussion of updated lighting ordinance recommendations, and Michael has been patiently waiting to join us and be part of this conversation. So Michael, can I turn it over to you to walk us through what is in the packet and your recommendations that you've shared?
Definitely, and I'll go real quick because I know you guys have a lot of stuff to do. So the last meeting, I had presented something that just kind of had a bunch of kind of questions in it, and this was basically a writing where I tried to nail down some things and kind of get actual things permanence to what I was saying. And I'll be honest with you, even what is there over the last 2 days, I've been making adjustments to it because last week when I was working on this and got this to Brian, I knew there were things that just didn't feel right. And so over the last few days, I've made some changes, and they aren't big things. So basically, I don't know, do you want me to talk about the changes I made, or do you want me to ask if there are any questions to what I wrote in here?
Let's start with questions.
Okay.
I'll
So
start
is
with
any-
one. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got
okay.
one, Michael. I noticed the holiday lighting, the seasonal decorations piece. I'm just curious, you said January 15th, and I'm wondering if that seems, I don't know, maybe we don't always put up holiday lights, but when we do, we don't get around to taking them down, usually before January 15th. So curious where that date came from, and if you had any thoughts about pushing that back.
That date just came from because that was the date that the Tucson lighting code used. To be
Okay.
honest with you, I was like, hey, they said the 15th of January. I'll say the 15th of January. I also know, like, just from a Catholic perspective, the Epiphany is the 6th of January. A lot of times they consider the 6th to be the end of the holiday season, and this is 9 days after that. I don't really know why the 15th, the guy didn't look up like when Kwanzaa was or any other religious holiday or anything like that.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, I don't, if you want it, I don't, if you want to push it back to the 30th, I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, end of the month seems right to me.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
you don't have to take them down per se. You just don't have to have them lit, right?
Right, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. If they were still up, if they aren't on, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easy to get them down in January. Other times it's not so easy. Yeah.
But that's where the 15th came from. If it's the 15th
Okay.
or the 31st, that's not a big deal to me. Yeah. I just wanted to get that in there because I know at one time somebody did ask me a question about that. Like, some people put those lights in their yard that face up at the house, like those are pointing skyward. So those would be, not allowed, but holiday time, you make that exception.
Mm-hmm. Yep, got it.
So any other questions?
Michael, this is Steve. I'm looking through and I see a reference to lights on businesses need to be out by, I think, 10 p.m.
Right. That's yep.
Was that for park? I'm wondering about security lights. I've got the most annoying light behind my house.
Yes,
I
you
love
do.
the Sauk Prairie Plumber folks. They're super awesome. But
Right.
I think they're in the Esser building,
Yeah.
and it's got that security light that's just horrible. I mean, I
That-
literally planned my entire landscaping around that one light to try years to get the right tree to block that light. But I understand what they're trying to do. They want to illuminate kind of around the building to, I don't know what, keep the prowlers out or something, probably is the philosophy, right? What do people do about security lighting? Because I think that might be a question.
Sure. You're talking specifically about that white light that illuminates their two like garage doors, right?
Yeah, you
Well,
know it,
and
you
the
know it
whole
well.
city block.
Oh,
Yeah,
you can see it up and down Park Street for miles if you're in the right angle. Yeah, that's
oh yeah, or up from the bluff if you've got a night hike from up on the hill down there. It's
yeah.
horrible.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, see, that's not considered. Yeah, I don't building security lighting. See, if it's attached to the building, I don't really address it because I was trying to do more parking lot and illuminated signs. Yeah, that's a great question.
And I don't want to throw if that's outside the scope, I don't want you to have to go there. It's just it was a Steve issue and thinking, oh, how do we address that with exterior lighting standards?
Well, right. No. I totally understand. A better, so, okay, well, I don't know how to address it through the ordinance, but okay, one, I think that fixture has been there for a million years, so it's going to be grandfathered into any ordinance that's written.
Yep.
The way that they would actually make that area safer is underneath those garages. I think there's a slight overhang. You put lights in there, they're fully shielded to the street, and it just lights down inside the garage area. Then no light is even going out toward the street at all, is the solution. So, you know, I can think on it. Let me try to figure out what to do about it. It's grandfathered in. If it wasn't grandfathered in, how would the ordinance, how would they, you know, like what would they do to secure those areas using the ordinance? That's that's a great example to like, because one of the things I've been trying to do as this is going to be presented to different committees is what would be the lighting solutions for things that don't meet the lighting ordinance? Like what would be the change that would happen so that there'd be examples, you know? And that would be a great example. Because I agree, I do not find that light favorable.
Well, thanks for thinking about it. Again, I didn't want you to, you know, get way out of scope here at all. But one thing that's been kind of on my mind that, but I appreciate, I mean, oh, this is such detailed work here. So thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, that's a great example of a light though, man. Okay. So are there any other questions?
Yeah, Mike, I got one. Hold on one second.
Yeah, sure. So Steve, do you live like right across the street from that light?
I do. Yeah, that's my backyard is that wooden fence. Well, there's two wooden fences. I'm kitty corner. I'm across Park Street. And I'm not on the corner, but I'm one house down toward Park School. So if you're sitting in the backyard, essentially, or on the back porch, it's just like piercing.
Oh, right. But
Sorry,
you're
trying to
on
avoid
Park
kids.
Street.
What was that, Michael?
You are like right on Park Street.
We are, yeah.
That's
The
okay.
the corner of Park and Maple. Yep.
Gotcha. Right.
Yep. It's funny, so many people know that light.
Oh yeah. And has that light always been on, or was it just turned on like 5 or 6 years ago?
No, always. It's always been on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andy, are you ready to ask your
Yep.
question?
So the specifics of that one section that says you can only have a light that points towards the sky if it's for a US flag or a Wisconsin state flag.
Right.
Is that language from the ordinance in Tucson that you just kind of took over?
That
And-
language.
ahead.
Sorry, do you have more question?
No, go ahead.
That language was actually, reading the Tucson ordinance, I actually think that our current ordinance at one time originated from an older version of the Tucson ordinance, because I'm finding similarities between the two. But that line is actually in our current village ordinance. It was just part of number 1, and I broke it out to number 2 so that it was much more obvious, like its own delineated like fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I just maybe philosophically have a problem with that. That's the only light you can point to the skies for flags. But you know, I'd be interested to hearing anybody else's opinion on that one.
So Phil, like I said, that is definitely a line that's definitely in the Tucson ordinance, and it was always there, and it's a line that was in our old ordinance also. Can I ask why you're philosophically opposed to that? Because
yeah, I just think that that exception for flags of the state of Wisconsin and the US flag is, I don't know, man, it's just politically biased, generally speaking.
Oh, okay. So you aren't looking to expand it. You're looking to remove those exceptions even.
Yes. Yep. That's correct.
Okay. That's where, yeah, no, that's definitely was in our old ordinance, and definitely an exception that was made in the Tucson one, even.
It likely comes from way back in flag etiquette. You know, this goes, I think there's something very formal stuff written up about this. You cannot fly a flag of technically an American flag at night unless it's illuminated. That's,
Yeah.
I think, where that comes from.
I agree. I think that that's definitely in the unwritten book of how to use the American flag,
Right.
or like it's never been adopted, but it's just how people like it shouldn't touch the ground is another one.
There,
Yep.
yeah, I got all carried away in the Boy Scouts once over the flag ordinances. And it's all for lack of a better way of saying it, kind of BS. There is no flag ordinance anywhere. There's lots of suggestions that nobody follows. I mean, when you see a flag on a billboard, or you see a flag on a bumper sticker, or you see a flag, I mean, the only, according to the quote unwritten flag ordinance, the only flag that's actually acceptable is free flowing from a flagpole. So every other flag that you see plastered on something doesn't follow anything. So I'm kind of with Andy on this one, is just get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Iowa, and I got an Iowa flag. I like to fly every once in a while, but I would be in violation of the ordinance if I were to have a light shine on that Iowa flag.
Well, thank God too.
We got Iowa
All right.
flags. What's gonna
All
come
right.
next?
Yeah.
Oh my
Before
goodness.
you know it, it's going to be an Illinois flag.
And then a Minnesota flag, and it's all done at that point. Yeah.
So I just want us to note this, because I don't want to belabor the conversation, but I think that there might be more conversation we need to have on this. So did anybody have any final thoughts? Looks like somebody wanted to jump in there.
My only final thought is, and possibly we really don't want to jump right headfirst into the whole flag thing either.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's going to be distractive to the whole point of trying to eliminate light pollution.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say take it out just altogether. That way it's just not an issue.
About the light, like the whole, like number 2 just gone, the whole thing, you mean?
Take the whole thing out.
Okay, well, can I tell you how this also applies then inside of our sign code? See, signs also have to abide by our light ordinance, and this basically means that you can't have a ground mounted light pointed upwards toward a sign. Which at times hasn't been completely enforced in the village, and it's just been done just because people just go and install one. So it's kind of not having lights. If you're trying to reduce light pollution, you want to minimize the number of lights pointed toward the sky.
So Michael, what you're trying to do with this is say you cannot point lights up at anything unless it's a flagpole with a flag, right?
If you wanted to expand it to all flags, that would be fine. I mean, yeah, you could. I just think that it just says this because this is what was in there before, but.
Mm-hmm.
But why keep it in?
Why keep all number 2?
So basically, I think the question is, why don't we just say you can't have lights pointing upward at anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah,
Because there's a perfectly acceptable, solution to all this. I mean, it happens all over the place all the time. At sunset, you lower the flag.
So Michael, does that seem like if we were just to eliminate that entirely and say you can't have lights that point up? I mean, that would be the effect of eliminating that number 2. Is that right?
Okay, one second.
I think, not to interrupt, but I think you would get big time pushback from the American Legion when you go over there to tell them they can't have that light.
Yeah,
shining up at their flag or over at the fire station. I mean, people are
Yeah.
going to say, what? I mean,
you're
that
gonna have.
you're
yeah.
going to have a very big and ugly discussion. It won't even be a discussion, probably.
Yeah, it won't be. You're gonna have a lot of people that don't want any of this ordinance to exist at all. Kind of is my thought, that if you're saying that you can't have any lights pointed up or you have to take down flags everywhere every day. I mean, that is yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know about that. I just don't. I don't think that's actually going to be that hard. You don't have to have a light pointed at your flag.
Yeah, but a lot of people are gonna go want to break out the unwritten book, Oh Flags, and say you have to have a light on your flag at night.
Is that actually a book?
Well, if you Google it, they're out there.
I think it is. It's, I mean, whether we like it or not, do you take a position that, as Michael said, you throw the whole baby out with the bathwater here?
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to
Yeah.
have a facilitator privilege here, chair privilege. I'm going to table this conversation. I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of this today, but I think that we need to be thinking about how to get at limiting lights going up into the sky at night, and Andy's point of not giving bias to, not giving bias toward any one particular state, or being, I don't know if I want to say overly patriotic, but creating some bias there that is not productive. So I'm going to table this and see if there are, aside from this, we can pick this up in a future conversation, but are there other points here within the draft lighting ordinance that folks have questions about, or that you wanted to just make a comment on?
Okay, so it doesn't sound like there are any. So can I just go real quick through some of the other changes that I made that aren't in this document? I mean, they'll be real fast.
Yep. Let's go.
Okay, so the first one is how it talks about the exemption is the requirements of fixtures using incandescent bulb of 100 watts or less. Basically, since 100-watt bulbs are going away, in this new version, I completely get rid of the reference to the 100-watt bulb thing. And I say fixtures using a standard household bulb, like an A19, that's like what that size is, shall not exceed a lumen output of 1200 or less and a rated color temperature of 2700 K. I actually bring the lumens down to 1200, which is a 75-watt LED equivalent from the 1500. The reason I did this is just because I was out last night and there's some houses that I think that are using the 1500 lumen bulbs, and I'm walking clear on the other side of the street and casting a shadow. The LED lights seem to produce a much more piercing light at distance, and they don't diffuse as much as an incandescent bulb does. Whether or not that's going to get any pushback or not, I don't know, but I brought down the lumen count on that. And I'll go into that a little bit more in another second. The other thing is I talk about the color temperature of 2700 K and exempt residential motion activated security lighting. I also added a thing where I exempt residential motion activated security lighting from the full cutoff feature, because I went and looked at these at Menards, and basically these are things that mount up and they'll have 1 or 2 lamps and each one can produce 1500 lumens. And I'm just like, okay, like these things are going to have to be totally exempted, or like everyone who bought one of these is never going to be able to turn it on in the village if they follow this light ordinance. So I basically exempt them, but then I add in a line that basically says that the motion activated security lights can only activate when someone actually trespasses on your private property. And that's not in here. This was something that I just like was writing today, like it came to me. So if we allow these 2 exemptions, but they can only fire when somebody actually walks onto the property, and it can only stay on for up to 30 seconds while somebody's trespassing, you're minimizing that bad light in the village. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that was the way to get around that, because like if this thing ever goes to public safety, you know, they're going to be like, we want, you know, people are going to want security light. I'm like, well, here you go. I exempt them from this and this, but it can only fire when someone's actually on their property, and they can record them then. And then when someone leaves their property, it has to turn off.
Is it technically possible to to set a motion sensor so it goes off at when somebody's within a certain distance? I don't have one, so I don't know how it works, but is that feasible?
From what I read on the box, see, I haven't actually played with one, but it does sound like you can set the sensitivity on them.
Okay.
And you can definitely set the timing on them too. I would hope, see, maybe I need to do more research, but I would hope 30 seconds would be possible. I actually timed the woman's across the street from us, and hers stayed on for an exact minute. So I'm like, well, I would think 30 seconds wouldn't be a big change, because the car that drove by and set it off, by the time it went off, was completely gone off the street and completely out of the area. And that was just because someone was driving down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So those two ideas, I think, are really coming together, as long as they're technically feasible, which from what I read, it seems like they'd be possible.
Okay.
And so those were really it. I added in the variable message LED signs. Whether or not that's going to come to anything, I've read a few documents on them. It basically sounds like it's almost impossible to measure unless you buy some special tool. And it's just like, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that, because if the illuminated sign curfew goes into effect then at 10 o'clock, then they're not on anyway. Is pretty much the thought on it. Because I haven't gotten the email about the Tucson draft of their new ordinance, where I'm sure they're going to address things like this. Oh, I also added in some stuff on the curfews, that where it says it shall be turned off by 10 p.m. or when business activities cease, and they shall remain off until sunrise or when business activities resume the following day. Like, I needed a turn on time in there.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
So
thanks.
those are-
I mean, you've done a ton of work, and we're really, you know, in support of eliminating light pollution. So thanks for all the work you did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is great,
just sort of
Michael.
seems to be a continuing thing. So that's what I got. I want to, you know, make some more touch-ups. Hopefully I'll get the Tucson thing. And it still seems like my brain just still activates and tries to figure things out. Like, one of the things that, like, so now I've been like trying to solve problems. Like, if people start asking questions, like, one of the things is the rated color temperature shall not exceed 2700 K. Like, that includes, like, if somebody's going to build like a new building in the village, they have to, that would mean that they'd have to light their parking lot and their building light with 2700 K fixtures. My question is, do those exist? Can they buy those? Are those available? And that was research that I was doing last week and into this weekend. And they do exist, but they are not universally existent. Some companies only go down to 3000 K. Some, though, actually do 22, 27, 3, 4, 5 on their fixtures. So, you know, that might be a little bit of a reach, but I'm reaching for lower color temperatures, and they might have to use a different fixture. These websites say nothing of cost. I don't know what, you know, but I'm going for 2700K. We were able to do it with the streetlights when there were, you know, some companies gave 2700K streetlights, some only went down to 3000. We were able to do 27 on the streetlights. I don't think it's a stretch to do it on business lighting.
Well, Michael, please continue to do some of this research. This is really helpful, especially the cost things. I think the cost thing is going to be important. And let us know what else you need from us to, you know, what other feedback we can provide on this. And we'll continue mulling over this piece around an exception for uplighting of flagpoles and how we might, you know, whether that, you know, we'll have that as a future discussion point. So folks should continue to mull that over. But I'm going to move us on to the next agenda item. We're
Yeah, you guys
low on
can.
time here. So
Can-
thank you, Michael.
And can I ask Brian one quick question?
Sure thing.
Brian, Bill Chang at one time bought a light meter, like at the beginning of his or somewhere in his term. So it should be somewhere in your office or in your closet. Have you seen it at all? And if it's there, would it be possible for me to borrow that? A bunch of our ordinance talks about foot candles, and I would actually like to go out and actually measure some foot candles around the village, so I have an idea of what is installed and how it affects our ordinance.
I can't say off the top of my head. I've seen it. I will do a search tomorrow. I'll give you a call or email you and let you know if it turns up. And then if it does, we can arrange something. No problem.
Yeah, that would be great, because I don't think it's ever been used.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Michael, you can get those. There is an app that you can
Oh,
get for
really?
your cell phone as well.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just looked it up real quick, and it's the Lux Light Meter Pro or something like that. And I'm looking at it. It sure looks like it has the stuff you would need.
That would be great. Maybe yeah, I will. Brian, if you could still find that, because then I could do a comparison between the two and see if they both work or.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Michael. All right, I'm going to move us on to our next item, and I think we're going to need to expedite the next two, and I'm going to recommend that we table the discussion of our sustainability plan implementation. That being said, that conversation is ongoing, and much of what we've talked about already is part of that implementation. So the next item on the agenda is discussion of research needs for the new Village Hall and police building. To refresh everybody's memory, Jay Langfeld approached the Sustainability Committee a couple of months ago and asked the Sustainability Committee to do some research for ideas for the new Village Hall / police building. And that research, I guess, would entail, potential costs, as well as just sort of like feasibility and presentation of ideas. And so on our last sustainability committee meeting, we agreed to, in the intervening time between last month and this month, that we would come up with some ideas to share with the rest of the committee, and then see if we can hone those to make some research assignments. And so that's the topic for the Village Hall and police building. The next item, there are two number 6s on the agenda. Sorry about that. But the next item after that is the village water sustainability philosophy. And to refresh our memory on that one, in this item, Jay Langfeld has asked the Sustainability Committee to draft a village water sustainability philosophy. So on our last call, he requested that we talk about it, and we said we don't have one. It's not even included in our sustainability plan. It's not that it didn't come up, but it just wasn't one of the 25 recommendations. And so we've been asked to actually devise a written, some kind of something that can be referenced when the village to help the village make determinations on water. So that is the discussion. That's number 6. So 2 sort of meaty topics to cover. And I think what I'd like to do is try to spend just a few minutes on surfacing some ideas, if folks have them, around research needs for a new village hall and police building. I'd like to have some discussion around that, and then we'll see where we are with timing, and then move on to the village water sustainability philosophy. But that work may have to happen offline, and it may have to happen with a couple of, maybe a subset of us, a subcommittee on that. So thinking about our research needs for new village hall and police building, does anybody have any ideas that they have done any thinking on, that they'd like to share with the committee, that we would present to Jay and the village board about the village hall and police building?
Melissa, this is Steve. I wasn't there when he originally brought this up, but subsequently, the little bit of research I've done, I mean, does the topic of LEED certification come up at all? with this building yet? And if
Yeah.
not, why not? Because
Mhm.
that's it. They address
Everything.
everything,
Mhm.
and they have standards, they have a program. They're, I think, a touch expensive to get. I don't know if you get a lead consultant or whatever, but did that come up?
It did. And Jay, when he came to the committee, I don't know now, it was a couple of months ago, he specifically talked about lead certification, and then almost in the same breath said, but it's expensive. So could we basically do all of the things but not get certified? And what would all of those things entail? So
It's a ton. If you, I mean, and I don't know much about it other than, the little bit of digging I've done into their resources, but I mean, it's extremely comprehensive and deep and very technical. So he wants to get lead for free. Is that kind of
yeah, I
Yes,
think he wants us.
that's exactly it.
okay? Well, then, okay, you've
Right, I
answered my
think
question.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like farmers who maybe want to use organic practices, but the certification itself is expensive, and so they, maybe they're using organic practices, but they're not certified. They don't have the USDA certification. I think that's what Jay was getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about others or other questions or
Well, which
responses
for
to
the
Steve?
record, we should not be doing. We should get lead certified and just do it right.
Mhm.
Like that's where I'm at. Like
Mhm.
I don't like this under the table lead certification. Go through all the, because it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. It's just it rubbed me the wrong way.
Mhm. Mhm.
It seems, what's the term? Pound foolish, penny foolish, pound poor, something like that. If you're cutting, I think you could get a lot of great ideas, but at the end of the day, no one is going to take our thoughts to an engineer to draw up the HVAC system because, Steve did a Google search and found that geothermal's good and we need this many. I mean, it's going to have to go through engineering anyway. I agree with Andy. It seems like you're really cutting corners. And even if you got some great ideas, I think the strength of LEAD is it's a system. It's connected. We might have some great ideas, but they have a comprehensive. And so, yeah, I would just like to second that sentiment in that I think you need some experts on this. Not that we're not all capable, but yeah.
I actually have to say I totally agree. I have been playing around with this for a while on both sides of what is it, how because I remember the words he used. I want to be LEED compliant. I don't want to be LEED certified.
Mhm.
And so I tried to go through and I probably spent more time going down this rabbit hole than I should have, but I can tell you what the LEED system goals are. I can tell you a whole bunch of things, but I can't tell you anything about how to accomplish those because I am an accountant that
Mhm.
thinks sustainability is a really good thing. And then I said, okay, let me just pick a piece. And I'm going to say, okay, let's look at geothermal for a commercial building. And I can go down the Department of Energy's websites, and they've got a ton of stuff. But they all end it with, but it's site specific, it's climate zone specific, and you need an engineer.
Mhm.
And so I don't really know how to research anything besides what I've already done, which is, as you know, the Department of Energy says of all the different ways you could heat a commercial and cool a commercial building, geothermal is the best, most efficient way that they're saying right now. But I can't, other than that, I can't tell them anything because I know nothing about the building. I'm
Mhm.
not an engineer, and I'd be just making up crap.
Yep. All right. So here's what I'm hearing from everybody, that that we're I think across the board, we're not experts in the kind of information that would be needed to provide the level of detail that somebody who can run a building, can do LEED certification could provide. But I think that what I've heard consistently is that we would want the village to pursue LEED certification despite, despite Jay's opposition, that would be, that is something that we are recommending.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, strongly.
Yes.
Okay, so I think Jay's not going to be happy to hear that, and I think that he needs to understand that the sustainability committee is not a committee of engineers, and we can, as Steve said, we can Google everything we want, but at the end of the day, they need to pay real experts to figure this out, and that the best way to do that would be to pursue LEED certification.
And maybe Jay needs to hear another opinion, that we're not the committee to make get Jay what Jay wants to hear. We're going to
Mhm.
give him maybe what Jay needs to hear. So
Mhm.
that's why we're here.
Yeah, ultimately, we're the sustainability committee. We're trying to make sure the village is sustainable. So if we're going to build an $11 million building, we're going to build it so it's sustainable.
Mhm. Okay, well, I think let's start there, and I'm trying to figure out what the way to communicate that with Jay is, and maybe we invite him in to a sustainability committee meeting and talk to him about where we're at there, because I feel like I think that is the next, I think that is kind of maybe not the whole ball of wax, because there are probably, I don't know what LEED certification involves. Does it include electric vehicle charging stations? And I don't know, but
good. Don't really know on that.
yeah, right.
It
That's
does,
why you pay an
actually.
expert.
Right.
Yeah,
It
Melissa,
actually does. It's fascinating.
Yeah, there's a whole list of different criterion points that you're kind of building towards your project to achieve this certification status through all the various components that you're putting into use on this particular building. That goes for permeable pavers outside to solar arrays on the rooftop,
Mhm.
and you name it. So it's a point system, and it involves many components. And I know, my wife's an architect, so she does some of this stuff, but it's more of a scoring sheet, and it goes through review processes to make sure everything meets the criterion that's outlined in the certification protocols. And then there's, as Jay would put it, the upcharge for getting certified with this involves having people that are certified and know how to review these things to make sure it meets it, based upon all these various different factors and scorecards and such. So it's a more involved process. I think he's shooting for well, if we know we're getting those types of materials in, do we really need the scorecard to tell us that we know we've met it? And I think that's the component that seems to be the sticking point. And I think he went through this with the police department building that he kind of oversaw construction of and saw some of this firsthand.
Yeah, so we're trying to lead by example here, and so I highly encourage us to pursue this route.
Yeah, I
The
think
library was here in the village, so that was the first library LEED certified.
yeah. So here's I'm just wondering, I'm wondering about whether this is a memo or whether this is a conversation with Jay. And I actually feel like it's got to be a conversation with him. How do other folks feel?
Well,
Well,
I
I
can tell
agree.
you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I agree with that. I mean, he is kind of our boss in this one, and he did make a request, and we did think about it. We gave that request. We owe him a conversation in return. And maybe there is a way to go about this. I still think we are not the experts.
Mhm.
You know, maybe we need to hire an engineer or an architect that is, you know, so that, you know, we can go down the proper route, but we need to have that conversation with them.
Mhm. Okay. Andy, were you weighing in there too?
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to be careful with what I say here. The committee system to Jay is something that can or cannot be used whenever it's
Mhm.
convenient to Jay.
Mhm.
So I
That
don't really
was
think
very well stated.
I don't really think that he's looking for us to rubber stamp something for him, saying the sustainability committee has said X, Y, and Z. So for me, somebody who actually believes in this as well as you guys, I think we should just like go all in. Like, let's go lead. Let's do the whole thing and actually give a formal recommendation from the committee saying the sustainability committee has said we would like to go with lead certification.
So Andy,
That's what I think.
yeah, so you're saying something like a written memo that would have more formality and heft than a conversation.
Yes,
Mhm.
but we could also invite Jay in. I'm okay with that too, but I
Mhm.
just know it's going to be a waste of time.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna
Well-
change what I said then.
John, you're gonna.
I'm gonna go with what Andy just said.
Okay. All right. So here's what I'm hearing. That that we want to pursue. We want the village to pursue lead certification for the new village hall and police building. I think that has been consistent. I think where we're gelling now is in terms of how we communicate that to Jay. That is communicated via a formal memo that and that potentially it can also be a conversation with him, but that it has there's some formality and some you know, gravity around having the memo shared with Jay. I'm curious, is there somebody who is interested? So far all we've talked about is lead certification, which, you know, this is what I was saying earlier. I don't know enough about lead certification to know if it encompasses everything that we might dream up, or whether that is sort of the be all end all. And if so, if it's the be all end all, because it's a checklist system, then we can say this is what this is what we're recommending, because it can encompass so many things. If there are things that we would dream up though that are outside of the lead certification, then I think we need to spend a little bit more time thinking about what else we want to include in the memo. Does anybody know whether the lead certification, or do we need to look into this a little bit more before we even make that determination?
I'm fairly sure that is the most comprehensive
Okay.
system out there. I do know Australia has one. I mean, you essentially you know, looking at sustainable building design. I was looking pretty deep into one Australia had, which was a different version. But I mean, LEED, and maybe it's LEED themselves are proclaiming themselves as the most like widely used. Yeah, here's the quote: widely used green building rating system in the world. So I'm sure we could validate that or not,
Yeah.
but it's I think it's just the gold standard. I don't know what the downside would be other than cost.
Mhm.
Yeah, so here's what it says on the green building, US green building, whatever.
That's the
is,
reference I was looking at too,
yeah.
John, and that looks very comprehensive.
It addresses carbon, energy, water, waste, transportation, materials, health, and indoor environmental quality.
Mhm.
That's pretty much everything.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is we want to make the memo should really include one bullet point or one point, one main idea, which is we believe that the village should pursue LEED certification for this new building.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Is there a volunteer who wants to draft up that letter? Or that memo?
I'd be happy to do it.
Andy,
this
you're
is-
the winner. Winner, chicken
Yep.
dinner. You get to do it.
All right.
Thank you,
But
Andy.
know that you've got co-conspirators who are happy to help you draft it or take another look at it or whatever you need.
Do you guys have any problem with me just signing it off as the sustainability committee?
I don't. That's fine.
Yeah. And,
Cool.
and I think this is based on the discussion, it's pretty short and sweet.
Yeah. And
I,
I'll send it to you guys before I, obviously submit it.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, that's great.
thank you.
We are well past the time when I told my 13-year-old that she would be relieved of babysitting duty, and so we still have this meaty issue of the item of a village water sustainability philosophy. And if we could just take maybe a couple minutes, because here's what I'd like to do: if we could have a quick conversation and then maybe get a couple volunteers who would be willing to draft something to share with the committee. That's what I would love to do tonight. So could we do that? Just a couple minutes talking about this and then a couple volunteers?
Sure. And is a philosophy, is that like a vision statement? Is this a one sentence or one paragraph kind of thing? I know.
I'm not sure, Steve. I think what he's looking for, and this is another Jay Langfeld request. My guess is probably a paragraph, a few sentences, not
Yeah.
like a, not like a 5-page memo. When I see this, I think it's like 7 words or something. It's like, use less water, let it stay where it falls, like that kind of a
Oh,
thing. Couple
Okay.
couple bullet points.
did anybody catch that?
I
write that
did.
down.
Use less water, let it stay where it falls, unless it's in my basement.
Right.
So you're saying there's limits to water. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pro water except for that one
Yeah. And we're really not talking water management as in stormwater, rainwater, runoff. We're talking sustainability.
Yeah, so
And that's
this is coming up though in village board meetings. A lot of people at the board are upset about how much water it costs, and so they're
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
change it up and basically enhance the ability of people to use more water, specifically for watering their lawns. One of the things that comes up all the time is when new houses are built, all of the companies who are building these houses are charging people when they buy their house for the water that they use to start the lawn, basically.
Right. Yep. And then there are the folks who leave their their sprinklers on vacation, or they move in and it's a new house, even though it's a new house to them, and they don't know that how expensive it is to water their lawn in the first month or two that they're here. So we've been called upon to have, I think, something that the board can reference to say, hey, this is our philosophy, and that enables us to make for that reason, we're making this set of decisions.
Are we taking a crack at this now, or we're just sort of putting the limits, or defining sort of what the bounds of the task is?
Well, I think, I guess probably both are important. I was just trying to surface, what are some ideas that folks would have for the philosophy itself, rather than even thinking about the bounds of it. But we're gonna need further thought on this. And Brian, I know that you forwarded me a message from Jay, he was asking us to have this yesterday. Is that right?
More or less, yeah.
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 Yeah. It's
Hey,
gonna take a little time.
Hey, I know I'm not on this committee. Can I just add a little information here real quick?
Yep.
okay, I'm on the finance committee, and Jay kind of worked up a thing like where if you take the average water usage in January, February, March, and you said that was somebody's average. And then the idea was to apply that average across the whole rest of the year, and anything above that average would be billed like outside, like they wouldn't be billed a sewer charge for it. And it would just be like outside water. So it would encourage, people to water their yards more, like water plants, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and he really wants to take what you're going to write here and dump it into this thing, this proposal that was approved by finance the other night. So what I think, like, if you want this tailored for that thing, is this philosophy should be, the village should discourage as much outside water usage as possible. It costs a lot of energy to pump it out of the ground, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what he's looking for this report. It's just something that simple from from a sustainability aspect. I think he just basically wants to put another committee's stamp on this thing, because from what came out of finance, it looked like it wouldn't be a good proposal to use January, February, March, because like March was like the lowest usage and it would cause rates to go up. I mean, even the analysis at finance, in my opinion, wasn't 100%. It was kind of done. It was just this idea that Cameron had, and because we always have to grant like refunds for people when they leave their hose running because it wasn't a sewer charge. Well, how do we get away from charging for sewer charges for outside water? Well, if we stop charging for sewer for outside water, you could see a massive increase in water usage in the village. So if you guys say, reduce outside water usage, then it kind of makes this idea go away.
So I'm happy to draft to thank you, Michael. That's helpful. I'm happy to draft a few sentences and share it with the rest of the committee sometime in the next couple of days, so that and we can do a Google Doc or something on it, so that we can get it to Jay by the end of the week based on this discussion. Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Sweet, and it will be short and sweet, just like Michael just described.
Yeah, it just has to be no outside water usage. If you give it away at a cheaper price, you're going to be using a lot more water. That's bad. Or
Yeah,
something.
right. Yeah.
And Melissa, would you mind just going through who's responsible for what before we end the meeting?
You bet. That's my favorite thing to do at the end of the meeting. And so I'm going to wrap us up actually with that one. So just under we'll just go from the top. So John is going to prepare a presentation for the August Village Board meeting, and Brian's going to help get us on the agenda for the August Village Board meeting to do a kind of a summary and recommendations for No Mow May. And John's going to prepare that presentation, and John, you'll have some time on our August meeting if you wanted to review that with the rest of the committee.
I will do so.
Michael's going to take the feedback that he got on today's call about the lighting ordinance and put a little bit more thought and come back at a future meeting with some additional recommendations. And we're all going to kind of mull over this piece around uplighting for flagpoles and how we might come at that, whether that needs to be eliminated altogether or whether there's some exception that we want to provide. So we'll continue mulling that over. But Michael, you'll come back in a future meeting and kind of continue to share updates with us. We are going to push back on Jay Langfeld via a memo that Andy's going to draft. Andy, you're going to draft a memo that says that the Sustainability Committee strongly recommends that we seek LEED certification for this new Village Hall police building. And I am going to draft a village water sustainability philosophy based on our discussion tonight. And I'm going to send it to the committee sometime this week for feedback before it goes on to Jay. And I think that's where we're at. Did I miss anything?
Awesome, thank you. Hey, Brian, can you also send me the cost of LEED certification?
Yeah, I can look into that. No problem.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up? Terrific. All right, well, thanks everybody. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Terrific. Is there a second?
Steve will
Yes, there
second.
is. Oh, Steve beat me.
Beat you.
All right. All right. Thanks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned at 7:37. Thanks everybody for a great meeting. We got through a lot to talk about. There was a lot to talk about tonight, and I appreciate you showing up and participating. So look for all of those follow-ups from us individually, and have a great rest of your night. We'll talk again on August 9th.
Talk to
Bye,
you later.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.